The immortal declaration that all men are created equal has become one of the single most important phrases to emerge from the American Revolution. Unfortunately, at its conception, the phrase only included white, land-owning men. It was only through the efforts of civil rights activists and leaders that the intrinsic rights of all people were recognized, specifically those of African Americans, a group of people that were purposefully denied much of the American dream. The civil rights movement doesn't describe one single group of people. There were many different groups and different leaders during the civil rights movement. Their methods may have differed, but they all shared the same common goal: equal rights for all Americans. One such group was called the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which advocated nonviolent protest to achieve their goals and is best known for their first president, Martin Luther King Jr. King was influenced by the likes of Mahatma Gandhi and Henry David Thoreau, harnessing his wisdom to lead the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott and the 1963 March on Washington. In April of 1963, the SCLC began a campaign against racial segregation and economic injustice in Birmingham, Alabama. Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested during the process, and while he was in prison, he wrote letters from a Birmingham jail defending his strategy of nonviolent resistance. On October 14, 1964, MLK received the Nobel Peace Prize for combating racial inequality through nonviolence, gaining even more momentum for his snowballing equality campaign. In 1965, MLK and the SCLC helped to organize the Selma to Montgomery marches, directly contributing to the passage of the Voting Rights Act later that year. Just as the rising tide of the civil rights movement was crashing ashore in America, a man named James Earl Ray assassinated Martin Luther King Jr. on April 4, 1968, at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. In 1961, the Congress of Racial Equality, CORE, and Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, organized the Freedom Rides, in which an interracial group of civil rights activists tested Southern states' compliance with the Supreme Court ban of segregation on interstate buses. Unfortunately, trouble was waiting for the activists as Ku Klux Klan members organized violent resistance in Alabama and Mississippi. Another figurehead for the civil rights movement was Malcolm X, an African-American leader prominent in the Nation of Islam. Malcolm X articulated concepts of racial pride and nationalism, viewing white society as largely oppressive. He believed in the separate identity and racial unity of the African-American community. Other groups, like the Black Panthers, founded by activists Bobby Seale and Huey Newton, wanted African Americans to lead their own communities, engage in direct confrontations, and organize beneficial community programs. Thanks to the efforts of intrepid civil rights activists, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and the 24th Amendment were all passed in a short span of time, making it harder than ever to discriminate against African Americans across the board. Through resilience and perseverance, civil rights activists faced down violent opposition and seized their rights.